How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Tag Team, the Pokemon Trading Card Games premier podcasting duo. My name is Riley Holbert, and I'm joined by my good friend, as always, JW Kriwal. JW, how's it going today?
It's going really well, Riley. I burned like all my skin off today.
All of it. I still see a little.
Basically. Okay, yeah, you do. Well, I was working out in the blazing sun in the heat of a Columbus August and
Notorious
going
Columbus August.
the notorious Columbus, Ohio August. Going door to door doing the census stuff, which
Yeah.
I'm having a good time doing, but it just gets absolutely disgustingly hot. And they do have like an evening hour, but during that time I'm usually, with Anne or doing something Pokemon related. And so I wish I could go out more in the evenings, but I'm stuck doing it during the day. So I just get absolutely burnt to a crisp. My neck is destroyed. I don't think I'll have a neck after this is done. Yeah. So it's been fun. How about you, Riley?
I've been doing well. It's a very busy time for me. I'm in the midst of a really in-depth project, and really in the weeds right now. But it's been fun and engaging.
Yeah.
Speaking of the heat, I don't know if you have the right to complain about the Columbus August. I had
right.
My best friend in college. He moved to Arizona for grad school, and his car just straight up overheated and died. It was totaled.
Yo, that's wild.
Yeah, so he had to buy a new car.
Oh, get wrecked.
I know.
Doesn't he have insurance for it? Does insurance cover heat?
I don't know if insurance covered it or not. I mean, he was fine. It was like an oldish car, but still, it just overheated and was dead.
Well, one time that actually happened to me going to a Pokemon tournament. Have I ever told you this story?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we were going to a Pokemon tournament in Canada, and I, grew up in Michigan and knew, a couple guys from Michigan. So we were going to start and drive through my hometown of Port Huron to go into Canada to go to Toronto for regionals. And we're on the bridge, and the car that we're in just starts to really starts working, and we're like, okay, this is a little interesting. And we're sitting on the bridge because you have to, of course, go through customs and, they ask you a few questions, make sure you're, not a terrorist or anything like that, or carrying anything illegal into the country. Yep. And we are, we're paused, we're braking on the bridge, and then we start to get going again, and it's just working really hard. The car just can't quite keep up, and then it just dies right there in the middle of the bridge.
Oh no.
So we had to push it to the customs area. And it turns out one of the fans was dead, so the engine was overheating. So it was only half capacity of fan, right? So it was only getting half the amount of air that it needed to function. And it was abysmal. We actually had his dad, who lived in, the town that we crossed over into Canada. He came with the backup car and then drove the other car back home, and he was so furious. So we took the backup car. We ended up getting there fine, but it was another 2 hours of just sitting and waiting, for our backup car to come, and it was really funny.
I think I can one up you on that one. Do you know the Memphis story?
Yeah, with your big car?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, kind of on the way home.
Yeah, so I'll tell it for the listeners. So this is Memphis. What is that? 2018? It was 2018. Yeah, because I was still living in Columbus. And background, I was already frustrated heading to this tournament because I got canceled on by 3 different people. So I had this relatively expensive Airbnb that was split between 2 people. Thankfully, my second patron, Adler Pierce, was good about it. He was very willing to accommodate the increase in price, and actually it was super nice, and we had great conditions for 2 people.
Yeah.
So I guess it was fine. And then in retrospect, I realized how much I value comfort when I'm traveling, and that I'm willing to pay more to be comfortable. But Anyway, so we drive down with my old large car. It was the Yukon XL from 2005.
Hmm.
Magnificent beast of a car. Really, it was a behemoth. It was large. It was in charge. No one would mess with it. Um, but it was old, and I had just taken it to the mechanic the day before we went to Memphis. They fixed some things up. It was making some noise. The noise went away, and so I was feeling pretty good. And Memphis was like a sizable drive
Sure.
from Columbus. It was like 9 to 10 hours. Um, so we're down to Memphis. Tournament goes horrible for me. It goes fine for Adler. He gets like top 32 or top 64 or something.
Sure.
We played the same 60, but I had a much less sustainable day than he did.
Yeah.
So, all well and good though.
Yeah.
And we start heading back home after he finishes and gets his like packs or whatever. And the car is like making some noise, but it's like, this car makes noise. It's old. I'm used to it at this point.
Yeah.
So I kept on driving, and we make it to Kentucky. We make it midway through Kentucky, and the car is just really like hanging on for dear life. And I can tell that something isn't quite right. But I think I was still under the impression that we could make it, because we were only like 2 hours away, because we had like
You're kind of
we had like a half hour left of Kentucky, and then like the hour and a half from Cincinnati to Columbus.
Yeah.
Maybe 2.5 hours. I guess it would be a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But we're getting like we're right by the bridge between Cincinnati and Kentucky that connects the states.
Yeah.
And I realized the car is getting incredibly difficult to drive.
Yes.
And so it's like steering it is very challenging. And what I realized in retrospect was the power steering was no longer working. So if you're not a car person, like, cars have like mechanisms that make it easier to steer, because you don't realize it when you're steering a car, but you're steering a really large, heavy object.
Right.
And so there's assistive mechanisms there. When that mechanism doesn't work, you realize that you're steering a very large, heavy object with all of your physical might. And so I realized that this is wrong, and I use all of my physical might to turn the car off of the road and into the nearest exit. The car just comes to a sliding stop, and that is the end of the car. We're about 15 minutes from the bridge to Cincinnati, and then another 15 minutes from my childhood home, and then from there an hour and a half from Columbus, where we live.
Yep.
And Adler has like a final the next day or something, and so I'm like really worried about getting him home.
Yeah, right. Right, because the blood is on your hands essentially, right? It's your car and your responsibility.
He had basically just like passed out in the back seat, just like laying across all the seats, and just chilled for a while. I'm like on the curb, like crying, like calling AAA. Like, I just want to go home at this point. Like, I'm just miserable. The whole tournament was bad. I just want to go home.
Yeah.
About 3 hours later, and midway through this whole experience, some very under the influence man drives by on a motorcycle, and the mirror falls off his motorcycle, and he just drives away. He like got off the motorcycle, checked in with us, we're fine, and then he drives away, and his mirror fell off, and he didn't come back to get it.
That seems incredibly unsafe.
It was so funny though. So I took the mirror and just put it in the center console of the car, which I think it still is in there. But yeah, I'm just miserable. The AAA guy eventually comes, and he starts talking to us about like his experience with women. Which really I didn't want to talk about that at 3 a.m. But so it goes. We get back to my parents' house. I take one of their other cars back to Columbus, and I think they actually got it fixed up. What had happened was the hose for the coolant had like become detached. So the engine had overheated, which also deactivated the power steering. So unlucky for sure.
Absurd.
It was just ridiculous. That whole Memphis experience was just truly awful, from start to finish.
Yeah, hate to see it for sure.
But it's a fond memory, It's one of those things where it's really bad in the moment, but you can respect and laugh at it looking back.
Yeah,
Definitely one
because
of
I've
those.
everyone has that moment. Yeah, I feel like where it's like nothing could have gone any better, or like nothing could have
Worse.
gone any worse. I guess
Yeah.
in that sense. So, and you just have to just smile and brush it off. And yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. But,
That's hilarious.
we keep on trucking. Um, you yourself had a tournament this weekend, and it wasn't nearly as unsuccessful as my Memphis run.
Yeah, yeah, I was pretty happy with the results. So I was playing in the Atlas Collectibles Pokemon Online Gaming Championships this last
Global
weekend.
Championship, I think is the
Oh,
acronym.
Pokemon Online Global. That's right. I keep saying gaming. It's global.
A
Okay.
gamer at heart.
But that's true. That's true. I had a really overall good, positive time. I will, get into some of the criticisms. Nothing. I'm not bashing the tournament. I want to just be upfront and say that I am very thankful that there are people in our community that devote the time that they do to helping us have an online experience,
Yeah.
because I know it can be very challenging, and I know it can be very unrewarding, and I know that people can be very unforgiving with some of the language that they use around these tournaments, and they can be very harsh in their criticisms. And I hope that that is not what I am presenting. I hope what I'm presenting is just a very unbiased evaluation of my experience in the tournament. So it was very fun. We'll start just doing a very brief. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but just like a very brief for those of you that don't follow me on YouTube, where I posted a video about this. But what I played. So I went in with a Vigavolt deck, and my thought there was just to, especially in this blind metagame, I wanted to have like as much control over games as I possibly could, where I would try to take control of the game and try to just maximize the opportunities to outplay my opponent. Because we're looking at a format right now that is particularly fast. It's maybe faster than any of the other formats that I maybe have ever played, when you're talking about cards like ADP that can, reduce the amount of attacks that you have to use, or you look at, 2 and 3 prize Pokemon being just the norm. And so the game is extremely fast right now. And so
And just
trying to,
for the listeners who might not be as familiar with the Pog Championship, can you remind us of the format?
oh yes, it was standard format, but pre-rotation.
So Ultra Prism to Darkness Ablaze.
Exactly. So, yeah, I wanted a deck that really kind of slowed the format down in a sense, and slowed the games down. And I found that with Vigavolt, and I'd been testing that the whole week prior on my own and on Twitch, and I was just finding, like, of all the decks that I tried, it just seemed to maybe fit my style. Like it seemed to work well with me, and it had the best winning percentage. So I was like, okay, I tell this to all the people that I coach as well, like, trust your results.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like this was a really important tournament for me to do just that. I had the best winning percentage with Vigavolt on the ladder, and just with my own testing. And so I trusted my results from the testing and went into the tournament, feeling very good about it. And so day one was pretty solid. I, went 7-2 to make on to day 2. And then in day 2, I maybe didn't do quite as well, but like all the games were extremely close. And I faced the biggest like regret, I guess, was facing a couple Vigavolt mirrors that had some techs for the mirror that I didn't have. So I took 2 losses to the same exact list, where they had just more healing options and more gusting options, and it made it really difficult. But still, kind of came down to that last turn in both of those matches. But day 2 went 5-4. So overall, again, I felt really good about the deck. Placed 67th overall, and felt like I achieved something and had a good time.
Awesome. Yeah, Vigavolt definitely a solid choice. I think, was it one Vigavolt in the top 8?
There was one that made, I think, 3rd.
Yeah, so there's a Vigavolt up there in the top 8, and then there was also the eventual winner of the tournament. The Pikarom deck played 2 Vigavolt, really leaning into that option for the lightning type archetypes. So
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe in retrospect, like some type of Pikarom based Vikavolt build or Vikavolt based Pikarom build would have been, obviously the play. I mean, it performed. It not only won, but it had something like 9 spots in the top 24, something ridiculous like that. So just really was a dominating force in the Pog championships.
yeah. So let's dive in then into what we saw as we got further up in the ranks, in the top 16, top 8, and eventual finals of this tournament. So, like you said, the Pikarom archetype really continued to see success. I don't think that is overtly a surprise to anyone.
Right.
Pikarom has continued to be a powerful deck. It really didn't lose anything going into this format besides maybe having another VMAX deck that can keep up with it. Um, but really, when we look at with the cross section of the metagame, like Pikarom was actually in a pretty good spot, especially in that day 2 meta, where if we consider like Eternatus a bad matchup, if it even is, um,
Sure.
the majority of the meta seemed very skewed to me in day 2, especially as you got towards the end of the day, towards ADP decks. It seemed like that was just overall the favorite choice of the day 2 metagame. And Pikarom really has continued to do fine in that matchup. Um, Certainly hasn't lost anything in the matchup and can come out of the gate swinging, as
Right.
well as just having a generally good matchup spread. So, I mean, what can we add that hasn't already been said by ourselves
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
Pikarom?
Right.
Pikarom
Right.
didn't lose anything; it just gained a new tool. Which I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like we say that every set. Like Pikarom, is already good. It got a new tool to add to its arsenal, and it'll continue to be good.
Right.
So
Right.
no
We definitely said
surprise.
that, I remember with Boltund, and then people started including, 2 Boltund in their
I
Pikarom
mean,
list,
even
and then
further
that
back, we had the Coco
started winning.
V, uh,
Oh, sure, the Coco V. Yep.
and then that got
Yep.
replaced by Bolton, and now we have Vikavolt. Like, there's just always
I
some
guess
new addition.
yeah, yeah, right, exactly. So yeah, it's a very strong deck. I mean, we don't need to go over it again, but just yeah, you saw the strength in it, and obviously Vigavolt being that trainer lock option that no other deck besides just a straight Vikavolt has. I mean, it was very powerful in kind of setting up, because we talk about Pikarom like it's one kind of weakness that's kind of hidden with the Electro powers, is the damage output. Like it kind of struggles in a sense to get those big numbers, but then you have something like a Vikavolt that can just come in and do a little chip damage, item lock the opponent, and kind of swing the tempo of the game for you. So a really cool, inclusion for a lot of Pikarom decks that performed really well this weekend.
Yeah. So, and just like Pikarom, I don't think we need to talk anymore about ADP. We've seen ADP to continued success. The deck really hasn't changed much at all, besides maybe having a slightly larger emphasis on the turn 1
Yeah.
at this point in the meta because it's so fast. Um, so I think the archetypes that I'm most interested in talking about personally, um, I do want to call out. I don't have a lot to say about this deck, but I do want to call out Excadrill. Ended up getting top 16, which was super cool. I think Excadrill was the first deck to qualify through the first day as well. Went like 7-0.
Absurd.
How many Pikaroms did it face to get there?
Right. Right.
But that's super sick. The 2 decks that I'm most interested in talking about, though, are Mewtwo coming back from the dead. Got not even really from the dead, but rising to prominence once again, getting 4th place and bubbling out of top 8. And then I also would like to talk about the Sanders Mill archetype. And
Yes.
I also want to rub in your face that I thought Mill would be a good option, and I said it last week, and you kind of shot me down on that.
Well, yeah. I mean, to be fair, although I will push back and say, did you think that Mill in the form of Sanders deck list would be what would have been played?
I
Because
mean,
I would say
it's actually not that far off. No.
really okay. Because I would say that Sanders list is just absurdly complicated, and not the Mill that we've come to know and love in the form of like Magcargo and Oranguru. It's just very different. It's very fresh.
Yeah, I think the main things that I wasn't really privy to, um, was the Delcatty. I want to say is like the main thing that I wasn't really onto. Um,
Sure.
and that was, I mean, that was huge and that was instrumental. He also had the Mr. Mime that I was never even considering, but I don't know. I never saw that Mr. Mime do anything on stream, so I can't attest like what it was
Yeah,
for.
I don't know. I guess I mean, I think it was just for like ADP, right? Because then if they GX attack and they don't have like a secondary attacker, then
It's
you
all
just
even.
lock them out of the game essentially. So, but yeah, I mean, Scoop Up Net obviously opens up a lot of new possibilities that I don't think were really that explored by many mill players. And to see Sander once again, play this just absurdly intricate mill deck that really capitalizes on a lot of these new tools that it has. It is really impressive, and I just give a lot of compliments to him. And I wish that he would have been able to win that first game and take home the crown, because I think we see something like this. This is like the perfect example of this is a perfect example of a great player taking a deck that they know inside and out to a high finish. And not that that's no hate on his opponent in finals, but just that Sander knows these style decks, has put a lot of time into that, and it just is paying off. It certainly paid off in this tournament.
Yeah, and I mean this is a classic example of like the fatal flaw of mill decks in large events is the time limit really plays against them. Not because they can't mill in time or finish in time, but if they happen to drop a game, they're the ones who suffer as a result. There's just not a lot they can do when they're put in the situation where it's a game 3 and time is low, because their opponent just has to be ahead on prizes. They don't have to reach a win condition. So we hit this game 3 scenario, for those of you who are watching, where Sander had realistically removed all of Isaiah's options to win, and he had like everything that he needed locked up. The board was set up for him, but it didn't matter. Like Isaiah had already taken, I think, 1 or 2 prizes. The Articuno option for him to like knock things out with it wasn't really available to him. So I mean, Sander just kind of lost, and that's just the unfortunate reality of these mill style decks. And
and definitely is like the gatekeep on the deck. I mean, there's a high skill cap. If you look at his list, it has somewhere in the realm of like 20 one-ofs. So already with the deck list, you give this to a new player and they're just going to be scratching their head at like what the optimal routing is. But then also having to manage time, it makes it for it's going to be a long tournament if you decide to play a deck like this. And again, to see someone perform as well as he has over the course of a whole season with these cards is really exciting. I am curious to know like what a mill player who, at least for this season and other seasons in the past, has made kind of a reputation on mill and stall, what they decide to do in the post rotation format. That'll be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Sander's really gone multiple seasons now, leaning into these stall archetypes, and I think it's lost a lot of tools. If stall exists heading forward, I don't know what it looks like. And that's coming from someone who maybe not as to the level of Sander, but definitely I am a connoisseur of the arts. And I have no idea what it looks like. Arts. I have no idea what it looks like going forward. But Sander is truly he's mastered these decks. So much props to him. He deserves every one of the finishes that he's gotten, and probably more. He's really carved that niche for himself really well. And I say that his concept was close to the one I was working with, but he really pushed it over the edge with the inclusion of Delcatty. He always manages to find those little extra tools. He builds his deck in a very unique way. So I cannot give enough praise to Sander, and praise to Isaiah as well. He's had a very successful season. Wrapping it up with a dub for Pikarom is very impressive. So it was really a star-studded finals there. It was really cool to see.
Absolutely.
I do want to loop back to Mewtwo, though. So Mewtwo was something that we didn't put really a lot of stock into, both of us. I don't really get to hold this one over your head, unfortunately. And it
Yeah,
saw
right.
a fair amount of success. So
Yeah.
and to be honest, I look at the
Yeah.
list and it's still a little hard for me to like parse out exactly what made it so good. I think it came down to like a good ADP matchup more than anything. It is my impression.
Sure.
I don't know if that's the same impression you got.
Yeah,
But
I mean, well, you're looking at ADP decks not have a way to hit
270.
270,
Yep.
and so
And Mewtwo can
they're
hit
they're
300.
maxing out at 260 because yeah, exactly. And so Mewtwo is kind of just blowing through your initial setup in the ADP and then not even getting response KO'd in return. So yeah, I mean Mewtwo, that would be the primary reason. I still don't know that I would have ever thought of like Mewtwo and Mew being a good play for this tournament. But yeah, I mean, when you look at how much ADP was played, which it was like double in day two, the next highest played deck. You can certainly see how a player that did play Mewtwo, if they hit a lot of ADP, would be pretty successful.
I think Mewtwo is probably also fine against Pikarom. At least can hold its own. Um,
Sure.
I think it struggles more so against the VMAX decks where the 300 is no
Yeah.
longer enough.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, Dragapult wasn't really a factor, but Dragapult basically killed Mewtwo off for, a quarter.
Yeah, definitely.
And so Dragapult's decline was also to Mewtwo's benefit. I don't
Yeah.
see how the deck like sustains itself against things like Eternatus, but Eternatus really wasn't that favorite of a deck. It seemed like in the day two metagame. I mean, it was certainly played, but the metagame was really dominated
Yeah,
by
I,
Pikarom
I,
and ADP.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, there were a lot of other decks up there at the top. Scentiscorch. Yeah, let's just take a second to mention Scentiscorch being an absolute flop.
Yeah, I got 30th as his top placement.
Yeah, I mean, and for the amount of players that played it, like you look at Pikarom having less than the amount of players that Scentiscorch had in both day one and day two, and just absolutely going ham in the finishes, whereas Scentiscorch having, somewhere around double the amount of players that Pikarom just had very abysmal finishes across the board. And, I think I would attribute that a lot to just the consistency, the raw consistency of other decks. Whereas I've found Scentiscorch is really live or die, even more so than a deck like Mewtwo. Scentiscorch is really live or die by the Welder. And the problem there is that you need Welder, like you need a lot of cards at very specific times, whereas a deck like Mewtwo doesn't necessarily need that. Because your attacker in the Mewtwo deck is a basic as opposed to Scentiscorch, where like you give the opponent that one turn to like really mess with your board position by gusting up the bench Scentiscorch or something like that. There are just other Welder decks, primarily Mewtwo, that perform better because of not needing as many cards in certain orders.
Right. Well, I'd even say beyond that,
and so.
Oh, you can go ahead and finish your thought.
No, go ahead. No, that's fine.
I was going to say beyond that, Mewtwo can get a huge KO on an ADP or any number of things on turn two almost always. Whereas Scentiscorch, it's not even guaranteed, even if you get a Volcanion off, that you'll do enough damage to KO something that's huge. So, like, what's the end game here? What are you working towards? I stand by. I stand by what I said last week, where it's when you win with Scentiscorch, you blow them out of the water completely because you have like an invincible, infinite damage attacker. I think that's the reason that people got so attached to the deck. I really do.
Yeah. And definitely, like last week, I was really just confused. Like I was hearing a lot of rumblings about, Scentiscorch could be good. Scentiscorch is good. Scentiscorch is good. And my red flags were up. I wasn't ready to call it. I wasn't ready to call it horrible because there are some things that make it, at least on paper, seem like a decent workable deck. But then in practice, I mean, it very clearly showed that it was head and shoulders, I think, below a lot of other decks. I mean, I mean, probably 5 decks that I would rather have played over Centiskorch. You look at ADP, you look at Pikarom, Blacephalon had showings. Eternatus, I would absolutely 100% take Eternatus over Centiskorch. And actually, the Vikavolt deck that I played and a lot of others played, had a good Centiskorch matchup. So at a certain point, you're looking at Centiskorch and like wondering what makes it any good against the field.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of decks I'd rather play than Centiskorch, I think Pikarom, Mill, Vikavolt, Mewtwo, Eternatus, Blacephalon,
Yeah.
ADP. Am I missing anything there? I think that's about everything.
Mad Party, bro.
I mean, I would rather play Mad Party because it'd probably be a more entertaining experience. Honestly, like.
Yeah. And that was one of the surprise finishers. We see Stefan getting 29th with a Mad Party list that I believe, less than 5 people had in day 2
Combo
for sure.
Mad Party.
But yeah, going with a combo list. I was just about to bring that up. So Stefan's list included the Jirachi Prism, Mr. Mime from Detective Pikachu, and a couple copies of Primate Wisdom Oranguru to just get that Jirachi into the prizes, draw it off of an attack. And yeah, it really worked well for him. Ended up getting a top 32 finish and a very unique list using
Thunder Mountain.
Mysterious Treasure. Using Thunder Mountain was the big card. Yeah, that was really interesting. I looked at the list and I was saying, oh, okay, where's the draw power? Because he only has one Dedenne in the list. Like there's no Crobat, there's no Oricorio. It's just the one Dedenne. And it really feels like in this list, like he is actively trying not to play the Dedenne.
Yeah, it's very much focused on the the Sinistea and the Poltegeist, and trying to draw as much with the trade ability that it has as pseudo trade, trying to keep GXs off the board, keep Vs off the board, have things able to be scoop up net. I'll also say like a notable thing about his list is he doesn't really have any movement options in his deck for those V and GX Pokemon. So actually the Dedenne becomes a huge liability once it hits the board. That's the reason he played the Thunder Mountain, was because he could Twin Energy Thunder Mountain and
just literally just scoop it off. Yeah.
So props to him for like finding that creative route to dealing with that problem, because you also need a stadium in general in case they play like a Wonder Lab.
Sure.
So I mean, that list was so cool, man. I love that list, to be honest. Props to Stefan for coming up with another super interesting deck. 1 for 1 on the top 32 there. So
I guess so. So very good. So yeah, that's kind of the overview of the tournament. Now, I did just want to bring up some of the praises and the criticisms that I had about the global championships. The first thing I just want to say is like, I think it's impossible to replicate anything like a real world championship. So I think in my opinion, Henry Brand is the current world champion. Until Pokemon has another sanctioned world championships, he will remain the world champion. I mean, certainly Isaiah put in, a lot of time, a lot of hours to get to the point that he got to. I'm not disputing that at all, but it's just not, for me, it's not the same. Would you agree, Riley?
Yeah, and that was kind of a loaded question because he knew what my opinion was.
Well, viewers didn't know what you
meant. I mean, on the whole, and this isn't a slam against the Atlas folks or the POG or anyone who says it, I don't think it's in great taste to call it like the unofficial world championship. I think there's a lot of reasons why that's the case. But at the end of the day, like the world championship, these online events don't really occupy that same space. But that's really beyond the point. I mean, there's certainly more to talk about. I think on the whole, it was a successful event. It did what it aimed to do. Got a lot of people out there and excited to play Pokemon, and that's all you can really ask for. I think it's a mistake for online tournaments to try and replicate what has already been. I think it's better for online tournaments as a whole to evolve into what you want them to be, right? Like try and make them into something great on their own merit, as opposed to attach labels for what already exists and that we can't match, Like we're not.
Sure.
This isn't the World Championships. There's plenty of reasons why it's not. Why do we have to make it at the World Championships though? Like this is an awesome tournament in its own right. You know, why even give it the bane of comparison?
Sure. Because obviously it's like a huge like burden to live up to, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Call yourself the World Championships, and that's fine. I mean, and it's not, you know, obviously there are reasons that you would want to call yourself the World Championships, right? To bring more prestige, even if it's just in name alone. So, you know, certainly a very inspiring effort that the organizers put on. I think you saw it. Just people are hungry to play in online tournaments, and you know there were over 1,200 people, and I think for like a first attempt, right? Because this was generally, as far as I know from the organizers, this was their first attempt at putting something together this big. You know, as opposed to the Limitless that has done it, I guess 4 times. This was this team of organizers' first time, you know, doing something this big, and I think generally speaking, pulled it off. You know, overall, I don't want to like give this a rating, but I would say I was overall happy with how this tournament was ran, presented, you know, the professionalism of the staff, and also the quality of the opponent that I played. I personally had just really great interactions with every single opponent that I played. You know, no bad sportsmanship, no kind of negativity. There was one interesting thing that they decided to do, and I don't know if this was something that they just, you know, maybe couldn't fix in time, but one thing that I worried going into the tournament was that the reporting system for wins and losses, and they opted to go with a loser reports that they lost kind of system. So normally you would think like, okay, the winner would report the score because they have an incentive to report the score, right? Whereas the loser might actually have an incentive to give the incorrect score, right? They might be salty, or they might, you know, just not think that they were beaten by a better player, or, you know, the number of reasons that a player who lost might report that they actually won, you know, seems very high. So they made
that would
change.
Actually be a demerit to winner reports, because then you would report yourself as the winner. Just pointing that out.
I guess you're right. But
I think there's a lack of incentive to report that you lost. Is more so like
yes. There's a lack of incentive to report that you lost. Sure, because you could only report loss. You couldn't report that your opponent won, right? Or you couldn't report that you won. In any case, yeah, it was just really interesting to think that, you know, and I was a little worried about that, because I was thinking like, okay, well, what if my opponent just doesn't report kind of out of spite, right? Because if we don't report in time, then we would both get a game loss. And so maybe they think that I didn't deserve the win, and they would just not report, and then there would be this whole issue. And thankfully that wasn't the case. You know, I didn't run into that, whether or not that was just because, you know, I played some, you know, people that would have known about the stream or whatnot, but or they're just good sports. You know, I didn't play against anyone that I had any type of issue with, and that's really, I think, speaks to the quality of the community. We just have a really great community here in Pokemon, and I think that's something that I'm really proud of when I bring this game up to people that are interested in it, and people that are just getting into it, and just like how good the community is. I think that was one thing that was on display. One thing that I didn't like was, and they solved this problem in day 2, but with just the time between rounds. In day 1, there was an absurd amount of time between rounds. And again, not like a criticism. I understand that there could have been a lot of variables. You're dealing with, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people. But the rounds took almost double the amount of time that they were supposed to take. And again, I don't know what that really means. Was it everybody reported at the same time? Did they have to like do things manually? I don't believe so, but you know, again, I'll give the benefit of the doubt, but that was the biggest criticism from day 1 for me, is that the rounds just took way too long. And they actually advertised that we would be done at about 5 o'clock Eastern time, started about noon and ended about 5. Well, we started an hour late, and then we ended around 9 or 10, depending on if you went to the final round of competition. So
yeah,
that was a little bit of a drawback. I think for if anyone's listening to this and they want to, start their own tournament or they're involved in a big, large form community style tournament like this, I just wouldn't advertise time limits. I wouldn't give anyone an expectation of, yeah, you'll be done by this time, because I think there are just a lot of problems that inherently arise when you're trying to put on an event like this.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Like, just not even bothering to advertise with the time limit.
Yeah,
it'll be done. I mean, it'll be done when the rounds are done. Yeah,
it'll be done when it's done. Yeah, exactly.
I think that's actually a valid point. I do want to, on the flip side, give props to the POG folks for developing a lot of interesting Discord tools, like creating a cool bot system that can track all this stuff. Wherever the bottleneck was in day one, I think it was at least a valuable endeavor in terms of like making these interesting mechanisms to make the tournament run more smoothly on the whole. So,
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of what happened in day one was that, probably everybody was reporting at the end of the time. Whereas in day two, you had a higher caliber overall of players, and then you had a longer time to report, because there would be matches that would be done very quickly, and, that could get input into the system earlier. And so, certainly there are just some inherent differences between what is being reported day one and day two. But overall, good tournament. I was very happy with how it ran. I was very happy to have participated. I was very happy that it was offered.
Yeah. So I actually have a question for you. Having been in both day one and day two of the online global championship, do you think in the online landscape specifically that it is better to do best of one or best of three? Because the different days had different styles to them. Did you find that best of one was more suited? Did you think best of three still was like a better way to go about it? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, best of three felt fine to me. Again, I think you could probably get away with, since the online format is just really quick and efficient in certain ways in terms of like, shuffling or restarting a match. You can get away with a lesser amount of time. I think for that, like, I think you could reasonably go down to like 45 minutes best of three in an online format. And that's not, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I don't think we've seen that yet from any online tournament, but it's certainly something that people could try. Whereas like you have that kind of pressure that you would in an in-person setting to, scoop a game early if you're getting down, but you do have enough time, I think, in an online setting to finish three games in about 45 or 50 minutes, as opposed to the hour that we normally get in an in-person tournament. So ideally, best of one would suffice, just playing extra rounds. I didn't mind that for the first day of competition because you were just trying to get to a goal as opposed to having like the best, ratio of wins and losses. Mm-hmm. So they definitely felt like two different tournaments in that sense, where like day one, you're just trying to, get to 7 wins and you're done. And then day two, you're trying to have as many wins as you possibly can. So I think they both worked fine, and they were just used for different purposes.
Yeah, I'm not sure I quite agree with the verbiage there, but I agree with the
you
sentiment.
Don't think so?
I agree with the sentiment behind the words.
Well, what don't you agree with? I'm curious.
Just the way you phrased it was a little off to me, but I agree with what you mean.
Fair enough.
You basically said you're trying to get to as many wins as possible twice.
Well, okay. How can I rephrase that so that people don't think I'm an idiot? It's just a race.
I don't know if there's a great way to, but
I don't know if there's a great.
It's like getting just wins on the board so you can get the benchmark versus trying to stand out as objectively the best. I think is like.
Yeah. I mean, like, misplays don't matter as much in day one as they do in day two, because your record overall in day one doesn't matter.
Yeah, as long as you get 7 wins.
As long as you get to 7 wins. So you could be 7-0, and that would be just as good as 7-4, or 7-3, or whatever it was, 10 rounds, I guess. And then as opposed to day two, where like, you want that good ratio, and the misplays could cost you.
Yeah, having the best of three would be more valuable. I get what you mean. It's like a ratio versus the final count. I think that's like what you're going for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think on the whole, I'm excited to see how these online championships continue. I really can't foresee anywhere in the immediate future any in-person events, especially as we said before in the United States, where especially in the wake of colleges opening and bringing back students, like we got a ways to go. So, so
Yeah, absolutely. But I do want to take this time to plug that we are working on adding more to the online landscape. I've been in talks with Andrew Mahone and Full Grip and Riley about producing some type of tournament for people that want to play, because there clearly is a lot of interest in doing this online format and participating. And so look for that in the coming days. Something that, the another community outlet for Pokemon.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about that. I think more than we intended to.
That's true.
Cool. Well, there's one last thing I wanted to talk to before we wrapped up season 2 of Tag Team, and that is post rotation. So we've hit the edge. Tomorrow, I believe, is the day of rotation on TCGO. So
yep.
I just want to get a quick firing off of thoughts about rotation.
Yeah.
And let's structure it a little bit. So, what's your favorite thing about rotation, your least favorite thing, and your number one deck choice after rotation?
What's my favorite thing?
Yeah, your favorite, maybe favorite thing that's leaving.
Yeah, probably. And we were just talking about how like intricate Stall was, but probably just saying goodbye to Oranguru and what that does mean for alternate win condition archetypes. Because I think for the better part of 2 years, Oranguru was the kind of mainstay in a lot of these Stall, mill archetypes, these alternate win condition archetypes. And so to see that leave, the format is kind of, I'm not one to be, very antagonistic about alternate win conditions. I think they're very healthy for the game, especially when they are as high skill as we've, seen. But again, just to see it leave is very nice. I think that card, I think Oranguru is a broken card.
What about the thing you hate the most to see go?
Thing I hate to see go is probably Thunder Mountain. I do like the Lightning support, and I do think Lightning doesn't maintain its prominent place in the metagame post rotation. I think it does occupy some place. I'm excited to figure out what that is, but the loss of Thunder Mountain and E-Power just really feel like a big loss. Yeah, I've really enjoyed playing Lightning decks since those cards have been out. So it'll be sad to see them go.
And how about your current choice post rotation?
Current choice? Well, we were talking about Lightning decks, but I really have been excited to have Inteleon rise to the forefront. Yeah, I was just saying how much I will miss Lightning decks, but at the same time, their absence.
Inteleon doesn't miss them at all.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm looking forward to Inteleon. That was a deck that last format, or I guess this current format, if we're talking, pre-rotation, I enjoyed playing. It was probably my like meme or rogue deck of choice, and I just really like putting a lot of time into it because I like the snipe, I like the energy removal or denial, and it just felt really fun to me. And so now with Lightning getting a little bit of a nerf, it should be able to compete. It's had its biggest enemies kind of taken out, so should be cool.
Taken out is an interesting way of phrasing that.
From the knees, bro.
Yeah.
Just like take a big billy club and just.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Inteleon, honestly, as a Pokemon, Inteleon got too much flack. Inteleon is a cool Pokemon. Little sniper guy. He's a little sniper, man. That's sick.
I mean, it's kind of, I don't know if it's really in good taste right now, but
maybe not. I don't know. You don't have to think of it like that.
Well, I mean, it's okay. And I digress. So,
Well,
what about you, Riley? What are the answers for you for those questions?
It's funny because my answers are probably just like the reverse of what you said. Um, I'm sick of lightning support. I think it's awful. I don't think it was very good card design. Um, Not that Oranguru is good card design. Um, but I hate how much it pigeonholed the lightning decks. I hate how much it oppressed anything that was weak to lightning, because you weren't just, you were weak to lightning like times a billion because of Electropower. You know, like they played 2 Electropowers, it's an extra 120 damage.
Yeah.
So like if you were weak to lightning, you could just be like rammed by some random like Pikachu and just die.
Yeah.
So I didn't like that. I thought Thunder Mountain was kind of a silly card.
Yeah.
I think one of like Coco or Thunder Mountain is fine, but having them both at once really just ramped decks up beyond what I thought was reasonable.
Appropriate.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I am sad actually to see Oranguru go.
Okay.
And it's not just because of mill decks. I thought it was like a very skill intensive card. I put a lot of it was a very thought provoking card. Had a lot of interesting like uses, and I just there's not like an immediate niche for alternate win con decks, especially with Belova also rotating, or I guess being banned. Pseudo rotating. So I just don't know what like the future of alternate win conditions are, and I agree with you that like having some sort of alternate condition is healthy, and it forces you to be like thoughtful about how you're building decks and what you're going to play against, as opposed to just thinking about like tight matchups and like bashing your skulls in against another VMAX.
Yeah, doing a lot of damage. With the right type.
And I've expressed a lot recently that I am not really a big fan of having these gigantic VMAX Pokemon just use these relatively vanilla attacks against each other over and over until one of them dies. And so I feel like it's kind of unfortunate that we're basically nixing off all of the support for alternate win conditions.
Yeah, sure.
So, and
sure.
I don't know if I'm more sad about Oranguru directly as much as I am just like there doesn't seem like there's not like a route, you know, there's no wacky smacky as far as I can tell right now. And that didn't play Oranguru, it was just a stall deck.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Decidueye being kind of the torchbearer for kind of stall, but
not really. That has to take prizes, you know, it has to put offensive pressure.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what I'm saying is like, you look at that as being like, okay, that's the future, but like the future is not very bright for that kind of deck.
Yeah, and let alone the fact that Decidueye probably isn't a great deck anyway.
Let alone the fact that, people still enjoy Centiskorch for some reason, so you're going to just get bodied by the Volcanions.
Right, yeah. So. Like, I don't want to be caught in the situation where I feel like I just have to choose ADP or my favorite colored VMAX. And I feel like that's the situation the game is getting pigeonholed down. And I'm not really... It's not like making me so overtly upset that I'm not like excited to play the game. But it's just like it's less exciting to me than if there were more interesting
it's certainly
ways.
It's certainly going to be very noticeable.
Yeah, I think the other card that I'll miss the most is Fiery Flint, because I really like Aevocephalon, and that deck was not very skillful. You know, there's like some like sequencing with it, but like compared to like Mill, you know, it was or like Stall, I guess more appropriately, it was the more skillful of the two, but
right.
You know, even then, like, it was just I really liked Aevocephalon, especially towards the end of the format. I just ran Aevocephalon at the wall, and I loved it. It's so fun. And it's still around, but it loses one of its most important, I would argue, tools in Fiery Flint. Sure. And I don't know if there's an immediate replacement that fills that niche very well. So, just another thing I'm sad to see it go, you know?
What's the archetype that you're most excited to play?
That I'm most excited to play, just like I've mentioned the past couple weeks, my favorite colored VMAX, which is Eternatus. I really like the dark type Pokemon. I always have. I'm that guy.
You're that guy.
I started off the game playing Darkrai Hypno, that evolved into Turbo Dark / Dark Dragons. Then I've played Zoroark.
You played Darkrai Hypno was your first deck?
Yeah, it was the first deck I ever built.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that deck was sick.
I remember that when that deck was like, people were like, oh man, this could actually be good. Got to get your Hypnos. Oh my god, I can't believe that was the first one.
Yeah, that deck was sick.
Wow. Wow, that really dates you. I didn't. You're such a youngster.
I am a youngster. But throughout my entire history, I went from Dark Hypno to Turbo Dark / Dark Dragons to Zoroark,
Yeah.
and the darkness
Darkness
has returned. I even pushed for Dark Box like harder than I probably should have to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I am personally excited for Eternatus. It is a dark type Pokemon, which is sick. It is got a big old bench, which is sick.
Yeah, man.
So, that's really my 2 criteria.
That's funny. That's really funny. Wow, Darkrai Hypno. Well, as a time rally, let's open it up to the floor here. Dan had something that he wanted to bring up about the Dan battle. So Count to Money and I had a Dan battle, which is something I advertise over on my Twitch channel. And Dan, it's where we play as many Dans as we possibly can, and it's really just rock paper scissors through the lens of Pokemon TCGO. And Dan crushed me. Count to Money just absolutely obliterated. I swore that he was like looking at my screen, but he did.
Full There's also a slight delay, like inherently.
Sure, yeah. There's a slight delay. Exactly. I don't think he was doing it because a lot of the times when I would press my choice, like it would be immediately responded to, but it was just absurd. I went like 6 and 12 or like 5 and 13 or something, or just ridiculously low. I have been known to be kind of a legend in rock paper scissors.
I was going to talk about our Christmas RPS battle. I think it was like best of 21, and I think you beat me. It was like 11-7 or something.
Yeah, like fairly handily. Yeah,
that's a substantial lead. And I consider myself to be good at RPS, so that only speaks to your strength of character and power.
That's what I'm saying. So anyway, Dan just like destroyed me, and I'm not that salty, but I'm a little salty.
I'm wondering if your power somewhat lies in like a real world landscape where you can have like your eyes digging into them.
Right. You can read the opponent maybe a little bit more.
Yeah. You have like the Sharingan from Naruto, and like you're reading their movements before they happen.
Yeah, that could definitely be true. And maybe it's just like the hype that I need. Like I need an audience. It just doesn't feel the same when I'm doing it over a computer screen.
Yeah.
With no one around me.
Should we do like a quick virtual RPS battle?
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Wait, you just waited so long.
Well, I didn't see what you had.
Oh, okay.
Wait, but I heard a delay.
We're throwing on
Okay, I heard a delay. Okay, ready? Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Oh, I cut your paper, bro.
Oh, dang.
Scissors beats paper.
Right, well,
Riley's 1-0 in the tag team championship for RPS.
I've lost my touch.
That's sick. Very sick. Fireflame 0 in chat asking if I'm keeping my post-pandemic hair. Probably, yeah. I kind of like it a little bit longer. I want to dye it. That's my next adventure, is dyeing my hair. You should dye the bun. You should dye just the bun.
Just the bun. We've talked about doing like a lemon juice type thing. Lemon juice and sun. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to have like dirty blonde hair. That'd be sick. But...
Okay. Feel it. So, well, Riley, we are coming to the end of our second season.
Yeah, come a long way.
That we have a lot of exciting things in store for the next season. Going to be changing it up a little bit, not too much, but a little bit. Going to be adding some things, changing up the look a little bit. So, yeah, just stay tuned. It should be great. If you're listening to us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, please make sure to leave us a review. That's really helpful for other people to find us. So if you like the podcast and you think someone else would like the podcast, just let us know. Leave that review and help us get the exposure that we need.
Yeah, absolutely. So we appreciate you all. We love you as always. Thank you for the support through the first 2 seasons, and we will catch you on the next one. Peace.
See ya.